Right bracket Chapter 5. Full Dreams and Empty Minds. By John R. Christiansen. The following article was printed in a magazine called Mountain West, Vol. 6, Number 2, pages 26 to 30, which was published monthly in Provo, Utah. Full Dreams and Empty Minds. By John R. Christiansen. As you travel near Spanish Fork in South Utah County and look eastward toward the mountains, the mill can be seen quite easily. In fact, it can be seen from as far away as Provo. The long white concrete structure seems to cling tenaciously to the mountainside. Scattered beneath it are other, more conventional buildings, and below them are terraces which are now being developed into fruit orchards and grain fields. This singular view has likely sparked many conversations among people traveling by, such as, "Daddy, what is that white building up there on the mountain?" "Where, son?" "Oh, over there." "Why, that's the Dream Mine." "The Dream Mine? What's that?" "Well, son, I'm not too sure, but some man had a dream about there being a lot of gold in that mountain, so he started up there to get it out." "No kidding, Dad. Did he get the gold?" "Well, I really don't know, but I don't think so." Right bracket While some people know more about the Dream Mine than this father, many people know even less. For instance, how many people know that the Dream Mine may have been the largest cooperative movement in the history of Utah? Yet, though operated mostly by Mormons, the mine was never officially sanctioned by the Mormon Church. In fact, the Church generally disapproved of it for many years. Likewise, how many people know that the fantastic mix of fact and folklore that is the Dream Mine story centers on the religious dreams of an unassuming farm boy from Spanish Fork? To be sure, the Orthodox Mormon theology that provided the basic values of that boy, John H. Coyle, had a visionary basis. Scriptural as well as contemporary stories reinforced his own experiences. The boy believed and viewed as a model the biblical story of Joseph who was sold into Egypt. Young Coyle knew that Joseph was able to interpret the Pharaoh's dreams and had implemented a welfare program to provide food for Egypt's population during a 7-year famine. In addition, Coyle's contemporary, Jesse Knight, had also experienced spiritual manifestations through dreams which resulted in fame and riches. That happened in 1896, just 2 years after John Coyle received his first spiritual manifestation. Through the information provided by it, Knight located a mine site near Eureka, sank a shaft, and struck a rich ore body which he immediately and appropriated named the Humbug Mine. This rich glory hole raised him from being a pauper with less than $100 to one of the most wealthy men in the Tintic mining district. News of this and subsequent fabulous mining finds of Jesse Knight were the talk of the West, including, of course, Spanish Fork, located just 35 miles to the east. Right bracket Not lost on the keen and impressionable mind of John Coyle was the fact that Uncle Jesse's successful mining ventures made him an even more respected and valuable member of the Mormon Church. He was reputed to have been the largest tithe payer in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints for many years. His generous contributions to Brigham Young University enabled that school and many of its students to survive financial crises. An exemplary Mormon in other ways, too, Knight built a 65-home town on a flat near the Humbug Mine. It was without a saloon. He also encouraged his employees, most of whom were Mormons, to attend church by closing the mine on Sundays. To keep their pay up with the surrounding miners, he paid them more during the week. This generosity and strict adherence to religious values were thought of as eccentricities in the mining world, but throughout the Mormon Church, Uncle Jesse became famous as a man who followed the admonition to live in the world, but be not of it. John Coyle's life was to parallel that of Jesse Knight's in many ways, but to differ from it tragically as well. But what about John Coyle's dream and the Dream Mine? In August 1894, Coyle received the dream which was to change his life and that of many others. Over the years, Coyle related to thousands of people that a personage dressed in white and radiating light appeared to him in a dream. This person conducted him in spirit to the mountain where the mine is now located. He was conducted to a certain elevation on the mountain side where the earth parted before them, and they entered into the mountain without any apparent resistance. The geologic features of the mountain's interior were explained to him in considerable detail by the radiant personage. Moreover, the riches of the mountain were described as being known to ancient people as well. Right bracket His radiant guide led Coyle into the mountain and explained to him how he would find the rich ore inside the mountain. The route Coyle was to follow paralleled a cream-colored vein. This leader vein continued more than 1,000 feet to a very hard capstone layer of stone, covering a large body of rich white quartz containing leaf gold. Beneath this ore body were 9 large rooms from which the ore had already been mined by ancient inhabitants of this land, Nephites. Coyle related that large pillars were in these rooms. Their roofs were filled with gold and were beautifully carved and engraved. There was other gold inside the rooms, both bulk and coined, and there were implements and relics left there, as well as precious records containing the word of God in great power. From these rooms Coyle recounted that he was taken southwest through a steep tunnel that had been made by the same ancients. This tunnel came out in Water Canyon, which is the first large canyon south of the mill. From this canyon, the remains of an ancient Nephite highway running south in a huge crescent over to the point of Payson Canyon were shown Coyle. The role that the mine would play in his own life, in the lives of others, and the Mormon church were impressed upon Coyle during that first dream. The mine would be richer than anything like it in the whole world. However, the big deposits of valuable ore he had seen would not be reached and released until a time of great worldwide crises. Then the people and the Mormon church would be sorely in need of relief. The mine would then be called the Relief Mine. In September of 1894 work began on the mine as directed in spiritual manifestations received after the first dream. Coyle and others claimed to find evidence of the right bracket veracity of the visions through the discovery of the prophesied cream-colored leader. Immediately, 18 mining claims were staked in the El Dorado mining district of Utah County, Utah. The names given the claims were Relief Number 1, Relief Number 2, and so on through 18. Following the spread of the news that Coyle's claim to a fantastic dream mine had been supported by the discovery of a vein, people began coming to the Coyle property and listening to his remarkable account. When the first major excavation was to begin, therefore, it was not difficult to locate sufficient men to help in uncovering the alleged riches. During these early years, the mine was not incorporated and no stock or interest sold. It was assumed that the volunteer workers would be treated as Coyle's partners. It was apparent that Coyle expected the mine to begin producing at a very early date. A statement indicating this optimism was made by his nephew, John F. Warner, who said, "My father went to the mine to work in 1895. One week he had to stay home because mother was ill. Uncle John Coyle came by and urgently remarked, 'We may strike it this week, and you won't be there.' Of course they didn't strike it. And they had not struck it by 1909, when it became evident that the few men who remained working at the mine would not be able to continue the work. These workers had received no returns from their efforts, and more men and money were necessary if the work were to continue. Therefore, on March 4, 1909, the Coyle Mining Company was incorporated. John H. Coyle was listed as president and director of the corporation and given 13,500 shares. He was also listed as trustee with 49,500 shares. Other faithful workers were given positions and shares, and 42,000 shares of right bracket treasury stock were put up for sale, with a par value of $1 per share. It would seem that in such a speculative venture, 42,000 shares of treasury stock and whatever personal stock the owners wanted to sell would be difficult to market. This was not the case. With the promise of immediate returns quoted as high as 750 to 1, the available stock still sold fast. Soon the amount of treasury stock was increased to 114,000 shares and sold. Stock salesmen went from door to door in some places. By this time interest in the mine had spread throughout the state. Persons from Logan, Ogden, and Salt Lake City and other communities traveled to the mine and listened to the remarkable orations of its founder. Prospective stockholders were encouraged to obtain at least 100 shares of stock at $1.50 per share. It was expected that the value of a single share would go up to $1,000, and just 100 shares would be enough to sustain a family. By December 1913, the shaft was 1,400 feet deep. Progress had become slow and difficult. The narrowness of the long shaft, its length, which required 11 windlasses to lift each bucket, and water seeping into it, made the work slow and arduous. It was decided to drive a tunnel horizontally into the mountain to connect with and drain the near vertical shaft. Ignoring advice from geologists and others, Coyle ordered that the tunnel be started at a place he had seen in another dream. Tunnel work began according to Coyle's instructions. On January 10, 1914, Coyle declared that he had been visited by two personages in an unusual dream. These people, later identified by Coyle as two of the three Nephites, affirmed that the new tunnel had been started correctly and that all he would see in the dream would be fulfilled. The first right bracket half hour of the dream dealt with the operation of the mine and indicated that opposition from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Mormon, could be expected. The remaining 1.5 hours of the dream, Coyle stated, contained information which should be given only to the First Presidency, the highest leadership body of the Mormon Church. 6 months after the appearance to Coyle of the two Nephites, a part of the dream was fulfilled. The Mormon Church brought pressure to bear on the mine owners, and all operations ceased. These pressures were exerted for two reasons. First, Coyle claimed to receive revelations not only concerning himself and the mine, but for the affairs of others. Second, some of Coyle's revelations had linked the future of the LDS Church to that of the mine. Not opposed to personal revelations among its members, the Church did oppose revelations which extended into areas where individuals were not authorized to administer. The mine remained inoperative for about 5 years. Then the LDS Church, in 1920, granted a request by the Coyle Mining Company to permit persons to operate it without jeopardizing their church membership. To do this, the operation was to be conducted as any normal mining venture, exclusive of supernatural allegations. So, mining continued. At no time, however, did appreciable amounts of valuable ore ever come out of the shaft or tunnel. The only rewards received by the faithful were the occasional fulfillments of Coyle's continued prophecies. However, in 1929 the faithful were awarded and the skeptics silenced, even though briefly. The Spanish Fork Press announced that the mine's operators had struck platinum. J.W. Wharf Company assayer had determined that ore samples brought from a side drift contained 0.3 right bracket % and more in platinum. The report thrilled Coyle. His years of waiting were over. The mine had come in. Such was the demand of the stock that a single share sold for $5. About the time all available stock had been sold, however, reports were received indicating that the original assay estimates were incorrect. Trying to be fair, Coyle gave an additional share of stock for each one the speculators had purchased during the boom. The quick boom and bust left even more people disillusioned in Coyle and his dreams, yet there followed a series of prophecies from him, which renewed the faith of the believers. Among these included a prophecy concerning the stock market crash of 1929. With the money generated by the fulfillment of this prophecy, the white flotation mill, so readily visible on the mountainside, was built. However, one disappointment at the mine followed another. At least twice, expensive equipment was installed to process promised high-grade ore, but again the ore proved to be low-grade. By 1944, these repeated failures had left the old bishop, as Coyle was called by close associates, exasperated. He was now 80 years old. Many once loyal and prominent supporters had renounced their belief in the mine, and some even denounced Coyle and fellow operators as charlatans. The most disastrous blow to Coyle, however, concerned his standing in the Mormon Church. Earlier, in 1913, Coyle was released from his church position as bishop of the Leland Ward. This release followed the publication of a statement called The Warning Voice by President Joseph F. Smith, then president of the church. This statement presented the church's position on the dream mine. Part of it read: "No person has the right to induce his fellow members of the church to engage in speculations or take stock in ventures of any kind on the serious claim of divine revelation or vision or dream, especially when it is in opposition to the voice of recognized authority, local or general." Although released as bishop, Coyle was still a member of the church, and seemingly took the release in stride. Repeatedly during the years following, however, the LDS Church issued statements concerning the mine, and some of its highest officials presented sermons regarding it as well. These statements were unequivocal in their denunciation of the spiritual basis of the mine. Nevertheless, many of those closely connected with the mine seemed somewhat oblivious to these warnings, and continued to promote the sale of stock based on excitement generated by the successful predictions made by the old bishop from time to time. On January 7, 1947, Coyle was called before local church authorities, and a formal church court was held. Reportedly, he was informed that he would have to either repudiate his divine claims regarding the mine, support the stand of the First Presidency regarding it, and retract all statements wherein he said the church leadership was mistaken concerning him and his work, or be excommunicated from the LDS Church. Faced with the ultimatum, Coyle signed a prepared statement indicating his willingness to conform to the required conditions. However, misunderstandings connected with the trial further embittered the old bishop and his loyal followers. It was not long before he ignored the request made of him. Weekly meetings, called testimony meetings by detractors, were again held at the mine, and activities proceeded at an accelerated rate. Thus, on April 1, 1948, another trial was held in Spanish Fork, and the ultimate disciplinary power of the LDS Church was exercised. Coyle was excommunicated. On the day following the trial, the Deseret News reported the incident and stated that the action was taken for insubordination to the rules and authority of the Church. Following his excommunication, Coyle continued to take an active part in the mine's operations. But he rapidly became a disheartened and broken man. Early in 1948 he contracted an illness which led to his death on May 17, 1949. Shortly following the death of its founder and namesake, the Coyle Mining Company was closed. Except for the caretaker and an occasional trespasser, the next 6 years of the mine's history consisted of work done on the annual $8,000 assessment assigned to the property. In 1961, however, a new corporation was formed. The Relief Mine Company was organized with Quayle Dixon, a faithful follower of Coyle, as president. Old stock was exchanged and new stock issued. The officers of the new company appear to generally follow and believe in the goals and aspirations of the old bishop, but are careful to limit themselves to activities perceived by the Mormon Church as acceptable. Assessment work is being carried out, together with some further exploratory mining and farming on the increasingly valuable land. A new office has been built next to the vacant home built by the old company for John H. Coyle. Today some of the more than 8,000 stockholders of the Relief Mine Company view the lengthening years since Coyle's first dream, the empty mine shafts and tunnel, the rusting tracks and mine cars, and the ever-present mine assessments, as increasing proof that the old bishop was indeed deluded. On the other hand, many of the faithful perceive the world's troubled condition as fulfillment of Coyle's prophecies, and each passing year is bringing them just that much closer to the time when the mine will come in. For them, that time is close at hand. Very, very close.